So I think there's going to be a little bit of overlap with Mina's talk, actually. I'm Ian Harvey, and my kind of area of expertise is about outcomes thinking and about that transition from outputs to outcomes. Who am I? I'm someone who helps organisations, departments, and teams move their focus from, as Mina was talking about, from outputs, what they build, to the outcomes they achieve. I've led departments, portfolios, and projects, always with a view of ensuring the work that we do has impact. So just want to have a little bit of interaction. I'm going to ask a question. You type your answer into Zoom chat, but don't press enter yet. And we have a countdown, then you press enter, and of course, magically, everybody's answers appears at the same time. So question is, what percentage of Google's ideas do you think work? Now remember, type your answer into the Zoom chat, but don't enter until the count of 3. So if you can all do that. Great, and 3, 2, 1, away you go. So what have we got here? Yeah, good range of answers. There's a couple I think are pretty much spot on. So generally, the figure you hear is less than 20% of their ideas succeed. Now, one of the great digital organisations out there. So just my definition, interestingly, slightly different to Josh's. No, I do know Josh and a discussion about it. It's about measurable benefits or measurable beneficial effects for our customers, our organisation, or our employees. And the problem I had with the change in behaviour is there are some really useful outcomes that organisations deliver which don't really come under that criteria. I'm thinking about things like, when you reduce costs. Someone working on a cost reduction doesn't necessarily change human behaviour. So that's why we use a slightly broader definition. I work with someone called Felipe Castro, who some of you may know, and that's the kind of definition we've worked on. So some examples of outcomes: reduce churn, customer churn from 15% to 5%. Increased employees who would recommend us from 65 to 85%. Increase the number of weekly users. All kinds of outcomes, measurable beneficial effects. And outputs, as Mina said very well, outputs are the things we produce that may drive those outcomes. So here's some examples. We may release an Android app, implement dark mode on our website, set up an Ask Me Anything with our CIO. They're all kind of good ideas, outputs, but they're not necessarily outcomes. And yet what we find is that most teams still focus very much on outputs. And the kind of things often you hear about from, I wouldn't say the strong Agile teams, the weaker teams, is that they're focusing on, things like features, releases, velocity, story points, which is, which sometimes can tell you about the flow of a team, but it's really not an outcome from a business perspective. So we've already said that, looking at Google's example, nobody knows what outputs will work. Not even the hippo. I assume you're all familiar with that term, highest paid person's opinion. And that's, that kind of opinion based is the worst way to make decisions. So what can you do? So what I advocate for teams is, and again Mina touched on this, is to focus on experiments as a way of understanding what's going to work and what's not going to work. So what you're trying to achieve there really is, let's imagine there's a concept Teresa Torres uses called the opportunity solution tree. You've got an outcome you're driving, lots of ideas how to implement it. And what you want to do as a team is reject ideas that are not going to work as cheaply and quickly as possible. So start with a hypothesis and test it. That format of that kind of experiment is, we believe a certain hypothesis is true. For example, if we introduce a dark mode, users will stay on our site longer and buy more. To verify that, we will run an experiment. We will measure the outcome of that experiment and we know if we're right if we get a certain result, and we know we're certainly wrong if we get a certain result. So just some types of experiments that you may do. Very basic ones, talking to customers is very cheap and usually very quick. Have a discussion. You can maybe share a paper prototype of an idea with them before you go into build. You can see how your idea will work in practice with a survey, and a couple of kind of more creative examples. I don't know if people have heard of the Wizard of Oz test where the user believes that there's an automated computer system behind it, but in truth, the product team is in practice working through and producing the output themselves. And a concierge test is a similar idea, where the user's aware that there's a human actually operating the test. And what that can tell you is your approach going to solve the problem for the customer? And also, is there demand for the solution you're providing, which are a couple of really crucial questions. So just the kind of takeaway is, have a think about what experiments can I use to make sure that the things we're doing as a team are actually going to have an impact, rather than just building something because maybe a stakeholder says we need to do it, releasing something because a stakeholder says we need to do it. So, yeah, thank you, and that's it. If anyone might like to chat about it a bit more, not on a kind of consultancy basis, just on a one-to-one, if you want to sort of understand a bit more about outcomes focus, please feel free to get in touch on LinkedIn, Twitter, or via email. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really amazing how topics linked tonight. Really, really cool. I really like it. Any questions from anyone?
Just a comment from me. That was really interesting to hear, because this is something we're thinking about a lot. So I might reach out to you, Ian.
Absolutely, yeah, go ahead. Always good to have a chat, and it's always a two-way learning process as well. So yeah, feel free.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Ian, once again.